and almost Shabbat Shalom. We're going to count the Omer together and then talk a little bit about Baal Tashchit. So please join me in the blessing for counting the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with commandments and commands us in the counting of the Omer. And we announce the day of the Omer, first in Hebrew, Hayom Shlosha Asar Yom Shehem Shavua Echad V'Shisha Yamim LaOmer, which means that today is the 13th day of the Omer, which corresponds to 1 week and 6 days of the Omer. All right, so we are almost at the end of our week focusing on Baal Tashchit, and next week we're going to be focusing on Shomerei Guf, on taking care of our bodies. And so today I wanted to share a little bit about Baal Tashchit and how there's a little bit of a crossover with Shomerei Guf, since it's all connected. That should not be a huge surprise. All of these issues are intertwined with one another. But I want to talk about an example from the Talmud of how they use this concept of Baal Tashchit. I've mentioned before that it comes from 2 verses in Deuteronomy that are talking about war during wartime, and how we're forbidden to cut down trees that are fruit bearing. And the Talmud and then sages after that have expanded and expounded on that. And in the Talmud, they expand the notion of what Baal Tashchit, of the prohibition against needless waste or needless destruction, is includes, and they expand it to the categories of food waste, waste of oil, and commercial goods. And one of the passages in the Talmud is an interesting discussion, and just first of all, this is why I love the Talmud. This is why I love Reform Judaism, and that Reform Judaism is embracing Talmud study more. Is I think this is such an great example of the Talmud modeling that Judaism is meant to be relevant. So when we read a passage from the Torah that says something about not cutting down fruit-bearing trees during times of war, the rabbis of the Talmud understand that to be the setting up of a principle that is then supposed to be relevant in so many other ways in our lives. So this is a great example of that. So there's a really great article about Baal Tashchit in this book, The Sacred Table, which I also recommend. It was edited by Mary Zamor, and this article is by Kevin Kleinman. And he talks about a passage from the Talmud that I really like, which is about 2 rabbis who basically are talking about if someone eats barley bread, but they could have eaten wheat bread. One of the rabbis says they're basically committing the sin of Baal Tashchit. And the same goes for someone who could drink beer but drinks wine instead. They're considered to be violating Baal Tashchit. And then the other rabbi, but both the rabbis are saying that. And then the Talmud comes in and says, but actually there's no problem, because what they're doing is better for their bodies. And so that takes precedence. And so it's tapping into this tension that we know exists today, which is we have so many food choices, and we're making all these decisions, and we're trying to balance all these values that we have. And one of them is the impact it's going to have on our bodies and what's healthiest for us. But there's also lots of other decisions to make about where the food comes from. And there are a lot of people who live in food deserts. And so making healthy choices for your body might mean making a detrimental choice for the impact on the environment. If food needs to be brought in from lots of different places. So this is a tension that we deal with today. And the reason that the barley versus the wheat is debated is because wheat bread was thought to be more nutritional at that time, and also used way more resources to make. And barley was cheaper to make, and therefore the value with baltashi is that it uses less resources on the environment, on the world. And but then the Talmud also is weighing that with, yeah, but it's not as healthy for our bodies. So I would be interested to hear what people think, if you agree with the Talmud, where it comes down essentially in this example, comes down that taking care of our bodies is more important than the choice that is better for the environment, or if you disagree. This is just one example of a text from the Talmud, so I would not take this as the definitive stance on Baal Tashchit versus Shomer Guf, but I do think it's an interesting point for us to be thinking about and debating. So I would love to read what you think in the comments, and look forward to talking with you more. Lila Tov.